went up to the attic to measure for a skylight, you know? Just a quick, mundane chore, trying to bring some natural light into a dark corner. 30 seconds later, I wasn't thinking about natural light anymore. I was staring at a 5-pointed star, burned so deep into the rough-hewn floorboards it looked like it was still actively charring, still faintly wavering with an unholy heat. The air itself felt thick, like static electricity before a storm, pressing down on me. My realtor, bless her heart, swore this place had been utterly empty, completely untouched since '93. Clearly, someone or something never got the memo about moving out. Everyone in town, or at least the few folks I'd met, called it the widow's tooth. You know the type. A grand old Victorian, once magnificent, now just a little too saggy, with paint peeling like sunburnt skin and wrapped in these dead, suffocating ivy tendrils that seemed to hold it hostage. But it was priced 30 grand under tax value. A steal, right? A diamond in the rough, I told myself. I practically laughed out loud when I signed those papers. My dog, Buster, and I are gonna fix you up, old girl, I remember saying, giving the dusty banister a hopeful pat. That was my first red flag, though I didn't recognize it then. The power flickered, just a quick, sharp blink, right as the words left my mouth. Almost like the house was reacting, like it heard me. Second red flag? Every single door upstairs was already wide open. Not a single one ajar, just waiting, like the house knew I was coming, or worse, expected me. Day 3, and I was finally tackling the attic. I wrestled the old wooden ladder through the crawl hole, the air immediately heavy and still, and climbed up, flashlight clenched between my teeth. The smell hit me first. Damp earth, old wood, and something metallic, like wet pennies left out in the rain, but sharper, somehow. I set my tape measure down, a dull clink echoing in the silence. Metal on what felt like solid stone, not wood. That's when I really saw it, not just a quick glance. The star, charcoal black, the wood around it warped and ancient. Yet the star itself felt strangely warm to the touch, almost as if the embers had just died. And in each of the 5 triangles between the points, a mason jar, 5 of them, crammed full of what looked horrifyingly like matted hair and broken, jagged teeth. My first stupid instinct was to laugh. It had to be a prank, right? Some edgy TikTok kids, maybe trying to freak out the new homeowner? Then one of the jars, the one closest to my foot, began to roll. Slowly, deliberately. There was no draft, no shudder in the old house. Just the slow, impossible movement across the uneven floorboards. That was it. My skepticism evaporated. I backed out so fast, stumbling over my own feet, that I kicked the ladder down with a deafening crash. My heart was a drum solo against my ribs. I sat in my car at midnight, engine still running, the AC blasting cold air against my sweaty face, absolutely paralyzed. My fingers, still trembling, typed into Google, "Pentacle in attic, what do?" The glow of the screen was the only light in the oppressive darkness of my driveway, illuminating my frantic search. Page after page loaded, not the helpful DIY stuff I expected, or even ghost hunting forums. Instead, it was scans from ancient occult libraries, grainy images of forgotten texts, and disturbing Reddit threads about claiming rights and spirit tenancy. And then I found it. A scanned diary entry, dated 1897, detailing an almost identical setup. The exact star, the jars, the unsettling human matter. It even had a name for the ritual, the hollow tenancy. The purpose, as described in the archaic script, was chillingly simple, yet profoundly disturbing, to grant a wandering, malevolent intelligence legal squatting rights inside the property. The homeowner, the one who purchased the deed, effectively becomes a mere guest. The squatter, the entity, becomes the house itself. It wasn't just haunting the place. It was the place, and I was just renting a room in its stomach. Next morning, I marched into the realtor's office, fueled by a potent cocktail of fear and righteous anger. She was sipping her cold brew, all smiles and polished professionalism, until I shoved those gruesome photos across her pristine desk. The smile vanished, her face drained of all color, going ashen. I I was told the attic was sealed since the foreclosure, she whispered, her voice barely audible, her eyes wide with something I could only describe as genuine fear. That's when the Real story started to unravel. Turns out, the previous family hadn't just abandoned the place. They'd fled in terror after their young son vanished without a trace. Same attic, same star, same unsettling circumstances. The official police report, buried deep in municipal archives, had a truly chilling phrase. He merged with structure. Merged. Can you believe it? I asked her, my voice tight with disbelief, why none of this was disclosed. She didn't answer directly. Instead, she slid a non-disclosure clause across the table, a perfectly legal, neatly typed document. Apparently, the county had paid out a hefty sum of hush money to keep property values from tanking in the area. Cool. Just absolutely great. I was legally screwed and potentially physically screwed too. That night, the house truly started to show its teeth, or maybe just its uncomfortable grin. The hallway thermostat, for whatever reason, stubbornly read 42 degrees, no matter how high I cranked the heat. My dog, Buster, usually fearless, refused point-blank to go past the second step on the main staircase, whimpering and digging his claws into the carpet, his hackles raised at nothing. I tried to tell myself it was just old house quirks, settling, drafty windows, all that jazz, while I tried to paint the guest room a nice, calming blue. But the paint kept sliding off the wall, almost like the plaster itself was sweating, refusing to hold the color. It was like painting on wet glass. And then I heard it, my name, from the vent above me. 2 syllables, wet and gargled, like someone trying to speak with a mouth full of mud, or worse, water. I dropped the paintbrush. The sound echoed in the suddenly silent room. Caleb, the kid I swore I'd never speak to again after he tried to exorcise our high school theater during Tech Week. But desperate times, right? He owed me, big time, for covering up that whole holy water and stage lights incident. He showed up, surprisingly quickly, looking exactly the same, all gangly limbs and an intense, slightly unhinged glint in his eye, carrying a duffel bag stuffed with chalk, salt, and this high-tech handheld thermal camera. First thing he says, without even a hello, just walking in and eyeing the staircase. You already invited it by answering. Thanks, Caleb. Real helpful. We set the thermal cam on the staircase landing, pointing it towards the main hall. Within minutes, the screen, usually a uniform cool blue, started blooming with angry red spots. Cold spots, Caleb explained, that quickly coalesced into a distinct, crouching silhouette just 3 feet behind me, where nothing was. Caleb's hands were shaking, badly. It's wearing your outline, he whispered, his voice cracking, his eyes glued to the screen. On screen, the thermal image straightened, mimicking my posture perfectly. I waved my left hand, a nervous, almost involuntary gesture. On the screen, the thermal figure waved its right. It was a mirror, a dark, terrifying mirror, showing me something that was me, but wasn't. We followed the thermal silhouette's last position, which seemed to melt into the wall near the basement door. Caleb, surprisingly observant, spotted a loose baseboard, barely visible against the peeling wallpaper. Behind it, nestled in the dust and cobwebs, was a small, leather-bound notebook. It felt ancient, but also sticky, and its pages were fused together with what looked and smelled exactly like syrup-thick, dried blood. Despite our disgust, we carefully peeled it open. Entry after entry, written in the same spidery, desperate handwriting, dated all the way up to last week. Not last year, last week. I am the walls now, one entry declared. Another, chillingly, I breathe when the furnace wakes. And then, the one that made my stomach drop. The newcomer smells like hope. I will peel it off him. The final line, still visibly wet, still drying on the page. Tonight I try the roof. We both instinctively looked up, a slow, terrified ascent of our gazes. The attic hatch, which I was certain I'd closed, was already open. A gaping, black maw, darkness, thick and palpable, seemed to drip down from it like tar. Okay, Caleb said, his voice surprisingly steady, considering the circumstances. This calls for a full-on reversal. He worked with a frantic, desperate energy, drawing intricate salt boundaries around the living room, meticulously sprinkling it across every threshold and windowsill. Then came the sage, filling the air with its pungent, smoky scent, a futile attempt to purify the oppressive atmosphere. He even started reciting the Lord's Prayer, but backward, a bizarre, guttural incantation he claimed would unthread the original rite. Just as he reached the most distorted part of the prayer, the lights cut out. Not a flicker, but a complete, jarring plunge into darkness. Then, the emergency bulbs kicked in, bathing everything in a sickly, pulsating red glow. Every single door in the house, upstairs and down, slammed shut with a concussive force that rattled the very foundations. Every door. That is, except one. The attic. And then a thud. A heavy, rolling thud that traveled the entire length of the ceiling, from one end to the other, like a bowling ball dropped from a great height. My dog, Buster, who had been cowering under a table, let out one long, mournful howl, then fell silent. The salt line, Caleb's last defense, cracked right down the middle, as if an invisible foot had stepped directly on it. The thermal cam, still recording, captured a terrifying temperature spike of 180 degrees Fahrenheit, emanating from the exact center of the star upstairs. The whole house groaned, popping its nails and timbers like it was shrugging off armor. Adrenaline coursing through me, I grabbed the thermal cam, my hands shaking so hard I almost dropped it, and screamed, "Show yourself! What do you want from me?" The screen, instead of showing an image, filled instantly with text. It typed itself, word by agonizing word, right before our eyes, as if a malevolent presence was writing it live. Stay. Exchange. Flesh for deed. A cold, invisible pressure settled over me, and I felt my skin prickle, then blister, under what felt like 100 unseen eyes scrutinizing every inch of me. Caleb screamed, a choked, horrifying sound. I turned to him, and his mouth was sewn shut, not with thread, but with what looked like thick, glistening spider silk, already beginning to dry and tighten. He clawed at it, tearing at the sticky strands, spitting blood and saliva, his eyes wide with terror. Through his mangled lips, he managed to gasp, "Say an O! Say it!" The words burned my tongue, a physical agony, but I forced them out. "No!" I yelled, my voice raw and trembling, despite the pain. The lights snapped back on with a blinding flash. Everything stopped. The slamming, the thudding, the oppressive cold, all of it ceased, as polite and sudden as a hotel lobby after a fire drill. Caleb collapsed, gasping for air, his face streaked with blood. Above us, the attic hatch, which had been wide open, gently swung shut, latching with a soft, final click, like a deal sealed. We sat on the porch until sunrise, shivering despite the rising sun, watching the light slowly reclaim the world. Caleb's lips were a mess, definitely needing stitches, maybe even surgery. My thermostat, a silent observer of the night's horrors, had climbed back to a perfectly normal 68 degrees. It truly felt like the house was pretending nothing had happened, all innocent and quiet, classic narcissist behavior, if you ask me. I spent the next few hours, once my hands stopped shaking enough to type, Googling how to sell a house you don't technically own. No good answers, obviously. Caleb, after getting some water and a makeshift bandage, was grim. "It's dormant," he rasped, his voice still hoarse. "Not gone. You rejected its offer, sure, but that just reset the closing date. Next time it asks, it won't ask." The implication hung heavy in the air, thick and cold. It wouldn't ask permission. It would simply take. So yeah, if you've ever dealt with something you couldn't sue, couldn't reason with, something that just was, "I need your help," comment below with your best guess. Do I torch the place and walk away, losing every penny but gaining my sanity? Do I list it as cozy starter home with unique historical features and let some other poor soul deal with it? Or do I stay and fight this thing, whatever it is, head on? Don't forget to subscribe and hit that bell icon. Seriously, I'll be uploading whatever happens next, even if it's just a thermal image of my own funeral. I could leave, sure. Cut my losses, walk away, lose every last penny I poured into this nightmare, and let some other wide-eyed buyer inherit this cursed property. It's the sensible thing to do, right? My friends and family all told me to run. But running feels like it wins. It means this thing, this hollow tenancy, continues its sick game, and who knows how many more kids will vanish, how many more lives will be consumed by this house. So I'm staying. Not because I'm some kind of brave hero. Trust me, I'm terrified down to my bones. I'm staying because I'm stubborn and frankly, I'm just too angry to let it win. My first thought was brute force. I actually hired contractors to rip up the attic floor, thinking I could just remove the problem. They quit after the circular saw bit into something hard and unyielding that looked disturbingly like a human femur. Yeah. New plan. Since I can't physically remove it, maybe I can outsmart it. I'm turning this house into a live stream. 24/7. Hundreds of eyes, thousands, maybe even millions. Maybe that keeps it polite. Maybe the constant scrutiny, the unblinking gaze of the internet, is enough to keep it at bay, to make it behave. If this feed ever cuts, if the stream goes dark for good, you'll know. You'll know the house finally closed escrow on me. Tonight, I'm camping in the living room, camera streaming every creak and shadow, every whisper. The salt lines are gone, replaced with industrial strength line chalk, a symbol of my new, permanent defense. Buster, my loyal dog, is safely at my mom's, far away from this mess. If you happen to hear your name whispered from your phone while you're watching this, if you feel a chill that has nothing to do with the AC, don't answer. Seriously, don't. I asked it what it wanted, remember? Told me, it's looking for roommates.